Olivia walked proudly into our anniversary dinner, her pregnancy evident as she declared that the baby she carried belonged to my husband. Little did she know, the evening would unravel into their worst nightmare by dessert. "Surprise, darling," Olivia chirped by my husband's side at La Papone, her hand lovingly caressing her pregnant belly. Her words demolished the night I'd spent months crafting, converting our 15-year marriage into a cruel spectacle at Boston's esteemed French restaurant. I observed from my seat, composure intact as I raised my champagne glass, masking the turmoil within. Before continuing, let us know your thoughts on this story and subscribe for tomorrow's special reveal. "I thought it best you hear it from me," Olivia proceeded, her designer maternity dress accentuating her condition. She eased into the chair beside Marcus, my husband, who seemed immobilized, his face betraying shock mixed with fear. He knew all too well this drama would not play out discreetly. The candlelight caught the sapphire pendant around Olivia's neck, my mother's necklace, mysteriously gone during a summer renovation. Her wearing it tonight was another twist of fate. Yet, they were unaware of my preparedness for this moment, having orchestrated it meticulously. "Rebecca, let me explain," Marcus finally uttered, but I silenced him with a hand gesture. The soft restaurant lighting gleamed off my wedding ring, reminding me of our vows soon to be shattered. "Please sit, Olivia," I invited warmly, a practiced calm like with my oncology patients. "Since you've made this night so unforgettable, join us." They missed the irony. At age 28, Olivia was 13 years younger, a temptation Marcus succumbed to when hiring her as his new hospital administrator. She was blind to the trap set months ago. Glancing around, I noted La Papone's strategically placed security cameras, ensuring every angle would capture the unfolding spectacle. I acknowledged the maitre d' with a nod. All was in readiness. "How far along?" I inquired, sipping the vintage de Perron, Marcus's favorite champagne, chosen for the evening. He always did have exquisite taste in both wine and women. 7 months, Olivia answered, hand protectively on her belly, due in January. When she reached for Marcus's hand, a gesture meant to wound, he recoiled. My small smile was justified. 7 months, just as my private investigator had confirmed. The timing couldn't have been more precise if planned by me, and, in a sense, it was... "Really?" I mused, reaching into my bag. "Then you must have conceived around the hospital's fundraising gala," I drawled, when Marcus spoke grandly of ethics and values. Olivia paled. Marcus fidgeted in his seat, his medical acumen now turned on decoding my serene facade. "Rebecca," he tried again, authoritative as with junior staff, "this isn't how I intended." I softly cut him off. "After the baby's birth, or post-financial transfers to private accounts." His wine glass halted midair. Olivia's smug grin wavered. They hadn't foreseen my inside knowledge. "I don't know what you mean," Marcus stammered, but the quiver in his voice gave away his deception. 15 years had taught me his every tell. I drew from my bag an envelope, placing it on the tablecloth deliberately. "You do know," I said, then laid out medical records and a USB drive loaded with damning evidence Olivia didn't expect. Hence the falsified patient charts, insurance fraud, mysterious deaths in your experimental program, I listed. Olivia's color faded. "Marcus, what's she saying?" she questioned. My look was a blend of pity and satisfaction. "Did you believe you were unique?" I asked Olivia, the first, prodding Marcus's affairs from years past, none getting pregnant yet. The maitre d' approached again, an envelope in hand, right on schedule. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded, fracturing. He'd failed to see my night-long orchestration, his dramatic reveal slotting into my plan beautifully. Lifting my glass for a final sip, I acknowledged that this was merely Act 1, the inaugural domino. By morning, Marcus's life, career, reputation, even his liberty, would be in ruins. "Since surprises abound," I said, carefully placing the glass down, "I, too, have revelations." Unsealing the envelope, I revealed medical and insurance documents as Olivia's expression shifted to shock. "What is this?" Marcus reached, but I was swift. "History," I replied, positioning the death certificate of patient Janet Morrison, followed by another, Thomas Chin, both victims in his wing, each yielding million-dollar insurance payouts. Those were legitimate, Marcus interrupted, terminal patients without options. No, not terminal, I countered, spreading more documents, showing their original charts before alterations, before joining your experimental scheme, persuading them to alter beneficiaries. Olivia's hand fell from her belly, horror overtaking her poise. What did you do, Marcus? She asked. Turning to her, my voice remained soft. Ever question his affluent lifestyle? I inquired. The penthouse getaways, his designer gifts? Blood money, Olivia. All of it. As La Papon's ambience faded, our conversation became central, the luxury around us a backdrop. While you played house, I uncovered a tale more sinister than mere betrayal, I said, pausing. For instance, mortality in Marcus's trials trumps national rates, I declared, noting every patient had coincidentally reviewed their insurance recently. Baseless, Marcus countered, failing at maintaining authority. Evidence. Sliding a web of testimony towards him as nurses, admin, even IT staff turned against him. Months of gathering, I went on. Ever since I noted unnatural patterns. Producing the second envelope, I continued. My discoveries go deeper. Olivia instinctively clutched her belly. From Memorial Hospital, a short stint ending abruptly over prescriptions. Noted omissions in her resume. How do you know? She asked wide-eyed. As an oncologist, I network across hospitals, I explained calmly. Did you think the woman hired over 3 superior candidates would go unchecked? Comprehending now, Marcus was realizing his world was a facade, a crumbling one. Rebecca, he began anew, but I'd heard enough. Such as your offshore accounts? I inquired. False insurance claims padded with excess procedures? How many lives have been traded for profit, Olivia? I asked as she backpedaled, chair scraping on the floor, denial spilling from her lips. Sit, I instructed firmly. This isn't over. You're expecting his child. Don't you wish to know the child's paternal nature? The maitre d' returned discreetly, a tablet displaying damning footage of Marcus at work, midnight falsifications, meetings with insurance, bank transactions. People shift allegiance quickly when uncovering deep fraud, I reflected. Marcus's composure was all but shattered. False accusations, he sputtered, caught by my web. Lives saved, my standing at stake, he continued half-heartedly. Were respected, I corrected flatly. By dawn, I projected, this evidence will circulate to hospital boards, insurers, even the FBI. They'll understand your deeds. His fear registered, a mirrored reflection of troubled patients receiving grim news. And you, Olivia, I assessed, should ponder next steps. Complicity in medical fraud carries weighty penalties, rare leniency offered to cooperative witnesses. Tears fell as her illusion of triumph shattered, understanding dawned. I knew nothing, she protested, her voice breaking. I never realized. I believe you, I acknowledged sincerely, affirming my belief. Like others, you were another tool, like nurses, patients, ruined families, all manipulated. The restaurant's atmosphere was tense as the sound of approaching footsteps caught Marcus's attention, making him glance up quickly. 2 men in suits, badges clearly visible on their belts, were moving with purpose through the restaurant. Right on time, I murmured, glancing at my watch. The FBI had taken a keen interest in the evidence I'd collected, merely waiting for the opportune moment to act. In a sudden flurry, Marcus stood, causing his chair to crash backwards, the noise slicing through the restaurant's buzz and drawing all eyes. You can't do this to me, he spat, his composed exterior as a doctor utterly shattered. I built that department from scratch. Everything I did was for the advancement of medical science. I echoed his words softly as I stood to confront him. Advancement of medical science? Like with Jennifer Adams, age 35, mother of 3? His actions were unthinkable. He had convinced her of a terminal diagnosis, only to have her die 2 weeks into his experimental wings trials, right after updating her life insurance. The agents were closing in, Marcus's eyes darting nervously toward the kitchen exit, calculating escape, but he hesitated as Olivia's presence, her pregnancy a stark reminder, kept him grounded. The agent stepped forward, voice strong in the quiet room. "Dr. Marcus Thorne, we need you to come with us. There are questions regarding several patient deaths at Boston Metropolitan Hospital." I watched as they recited his rights, the same skilled hands that had saved lives now restrained behind his back. Olivia sat frozen, her face pale, her grip on the table edge turning her knuckles white. The second agent turned to address me. "Mrs. Thorne, your statement has been pivotal in this investigation." Marcus's face snapped up, betrayal laced in his voice. "How long have you been working with them?" His shock was almost humorous under the circumstances. "Since Janet Morrison's death," I replied steadily. I could recall vividly discussing the condition of her care with her daughter Claire, revealing the evidence that proved her cancer was in remission before Marcus intervened. This revelation had been my investigative turning point. "Agent Cooper," I added, speaking to the lead agent, "you'll find more documentation in the hospital's backup servers. The access codes are in the files I've provided. Review the records from the past 3 years. That's when the death started appearing suspicious." Suddenly Olivia stood, looking unsteady. "I think I'm going to be sick," she muttered, heading quickly to the restroom, a female agent following behind. Marcus, almost openly desperate, said, "I did it for us. The department needed funding, and the treatments had potential." In a swift response, Agent Cooper suggested, "Save it for your lawyer." "No, let him talk," I insisted softly. "Explain how killing patients served anyone but himself, Marcus. What reason did your luxury lifestyle serve?" Pulling out my phone, I displayed photos of his lavish expenditures, fine dining and designer shopping. "Since your program began, mortality rates increased dramatically, as did your bank balance." As Marcus was escorted away, I directed another agent towards possible accomplices. "You'll want to speak with Dr. Patterson in pathology. He's been falsifying death certificates in line with Marcus's diagnoses. Check the pharmacy records. There's a suspicious pattern of errors." The maitre d' approached, a discreet concern in his manner. "Madam, perhaps our private dining room would be more suitable?" I prepared to leave. "No need. Our dinner has concluded." I gathered Olivia's forgotten necklace, a tangible symbol of what had been taken from us. On my exit, whispers began to ripple. By morning, Boston's medical community would be engulfed in scandal. Marcus's illustrious career built over years would crumble under scrutiny. His prize department, the experimental wing, closed and investigated to every detail. Outside in the chilly autumn, I paused, looking back at the unfolding scene inside. The agents now comforted a shattered Olivia, reminding me of the choices we make. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire Morrison, confirming the case's progress. "Yes," I typed back. "Justice is served." Another text, this time from a medical board contact. "Emergency meeting at 7 a.m. Licenses under review." Everything was aligning as meticulously planned. Settling into my waiting car, I nodded to Michael, my investigator, acknowledging our success. "FBI has all the evidence and more," I confirmed, thinking of the careful preparation, combing through records, consoling families, building my dossier under the guise of an unsuspecting spouse. "And the girl?" Michael queried, sight briefly meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "Pregnancy complicates, but she's another used pawn. The FBI offers her immunity for testimony." As we drove past Boston's skyline, I contemplated the story breaking across media the next day. The prominent oncologist charged. A fraud scheme unearthed. But first, families deserve their due. "Take me to the hospital," I instructed Michael. Before news hit, there were loved ones needing to hear in person what justice had been achieved. The hospital loomed, once a bastion of hope turned into deceit's core. Michael updated me en route. "Dr. Patterson's trembling in his office since word of Marcus's arrest. Too late now. Everything's documented." I reflected on my covert measures, the surveillance capturing every forgery, every insidious lie. Inside, families awaited in the chapel, hushed in anticipation. Familiar, grieving faces, Sarah Chun, Jennifer Adams's children, deserving closure. Justice is here, I announced, revealing the arrests and the unfolding investigation. Claire, tears in her eyes, recalled her mother's intuition, a sickening foresight of their betrayal. Doubts remain, Thomas Chen's widow admitted, reflecting on unnecessary loss. They wept, realizing their loved ones had become statistics to enrich Marcus's deceit. Before I could continue, Agent Cooper ushered me aside, revealing discovered emails, repayment plans. Marcus's reach was deeper than anticipated, more victims left unknown, but the truth is emerging, Cooper assured grimly. There's another detail. I confided to the waiting families, Marcus had a pregnant mistress seeking to share in our anniversary. Irony that time had struck back. Her role, unwittingly fortifying our case. A call for change echoed among us. Their relief, though bitter, shone as we pressed forward in this revelation of justice. As Cooper led me to view the pathologist's treacheries, FBI agents dissecting each trace of deception, I realized Marcus's empire was no more. Every manipulated fate, every deceit unraveled to its roots. News traveled fast in the halls. Staff murmured of the chaos unfurling. Marcus's demise brought reflection and renewed vigilance. Returning, my brief words to families, tomorrow's news, but tonight's truth reaffirmed quietly. It's achieving closure, I promised amidst shared hope. Driving from the shadows of the hospital, I cherished the role I had shaped, guardian of truths, bearer of justice. The threads tightly woven unraveled precisely revealed. Tomorrow, my truth, a renewed beginning among unspeakable loss, with Marcus's downfall, dark and final. The grim reality of Marcus's horrendous actions had been slowly unfolding over 5 years. Although months of investigation had prepared me somewhat, every revelation was still a sucker punch. Each untimely death equaled a family shattered and lives needlessly cut short, all for his opulent lifestyle and delusions of grandeur. As my phone vibrated yet again, it was Olivia's lawyer. My client is ready for a complete statement. She has records of financial dealings and meeting notes, and is willing to exchange this for immunity and witness protection. I quickly responded, "We agree, but she must understand that every detail counts, every scrap of evidence matters." Walking through the oncology ward, now marked by crime scene tape like a dark memory, I glanced into rooms where Marcus had caused so much pain. Nurses who once idolized him turned away, some shedding tears, others seething with anger at their ignorance. Back in the chapel, I spoke with the bereaved families. "This situation is larger than we imagined," I confessed, "but it means more answers, more closure." Claire, holding a photo of her mother, asked what comes next. "Now," I said, "we ensure such a tragedy never occurs again. Tomorrow the hospital board convenes. Those complicit will lose their medical licenses. The FBI is tracking every cent of insurance money, and Marcus will spend his life in prison, contemplating the lives he destroyed." News alerts flooded my phone just as dawn broke over Boston. Prominent Boston oncologist arrested for patient deaths. Headlines eliciting horror bore witness to a tale of a doctor-turned-killer. Families, tears in their eyes, found vindication in public recognition of their long-dismissed suspicions. Departing the hospital, I was confronted by reporters. "Dr. Rebecca Thorne," they shouted, "what can you say about your husband's crimes?" "This isn't about spousal betrayal," I declared, "but about families who trusted us and were deceived in ways unimaginable." My phone hadn't stopped buzzing, hospital board members, oncologists, past patients, all seeking to know if they too were victims. "The hospital's legal team has assembled," informed Michael, a colleague, upon entering the car. "They're strategizing damage control." I smirked. Copies were already sent to major medical boards nationwide. At sunrise, driving to an ethics committee meeting, I pondered the growing movement against Marcus. Dr. Eleanor Reynolds, leading the ethical investigation, warned, "The numbers are staggering, 47 suspicious deaths linked to Marcus." He planned even more, targeting patients responding to standard treatments. Documents from Olivia's lawyer confirmed these sinister plots. Records of meetings, financial gains, everything meticulously accounted for, revealed the depth of Marcus's manipulation. In disbelief, I found my own name among future targets, a life insurance policy procured by Marcus himself. Agent Cooper, leaning over a file, noted, Marcus's game was long established, with relationships manipulated and former complaints quashed. As emergency board sessions commenced, the chaos continued to unfold. Dr. Patterson has provided comprehensive records confirming each participant in the network Marcus constructed will face justice. Even amidst Boston's bustling city life, Marcus believed in his invincibility, a delusion that led to his undoing. In his office, under layers of deceit, spreadsheets outlining each planned death were unearthed. Names of patients, hospital staff, everyone carefully calculated into a horrendous business plan. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a former colleague, arrived from Seattle, burdened by the memories of ignored warnings and silent threats she faced. Together, we pieced together a timeline of manipulation orchestrated by a man who seemed unstoppable until now. Olivia, sheltered under witness protection, carried Marcus's child, yet another life complicated by his lies. As I prepared for the consequential hospital board meeting, with delegates finally made aware of the full dossier on Marcus, I realized the fight for justice was far from over, but with renewed determination, it was one I pledged to see to the end. Dr. Rebecca Thorne, the board chairman, began with a somber voice. We owe you an apology. When you first flagged concerns about the mortality rates in the experimental wings 6 months ago, we chose to ignore them. We prioritized Marcus's reputation over the solid evidence. I responded, addressing everyone in the room, this isn't about apologies. It's about ensuring this situation never repeats itself. Every system that allowed Marcus to operate unchecked needs thorough examination and overhaul. The board meeting, which stretched for hours, scrutinized every death and examined all procedures. The board voted unanimously to suspend all experimental treatments pending a comprehensive investigation. A task force was formed to review every case Marcus handled in the past decade. During a short break, I took a call from Agent Cooper. We've decoded more of the laptop's contents, he informed me. There's evidence of similar schemes at other hospitals before he came to Boston. We're looking at potentially dozens more victims. The enormity of Marcus's crimes expanded, like a disease infiltrating the medical field. Every new revelation brought more families to light, more mysterious deaths to examine, more lives shattered by his greed. There's more, Cooper continued. We found communications between Marcus and multiple pharmaceutical companies. It seems he used his patients to test unapproved treatments, falsifying results to help expedite dangerous drugs for approval. The magnitude of his depravity could still shock me, even now. How many drugs? How many companies? At least 3 major pharmaceuticals, he said. The FDA is already launching an investigation. This goes beyond individual acts of murder. He potentially endangered thousands of future patients with falsified trials. Back at the board meeting, decisions were made with urgency. The entire research protocol of the hospital would undergo restructuring. Independent auditors were appointed to review all current trials, with every death in the past 5 years subject to separate investigation. What about the families? I inquired when the topic of responsibility was broached. A victims' compensation fund is being established, the chairman declared. Every penny Marcus earned through his crimes, every asset he acquired, will be liquidated and distributed to the families. It won't bring back their loved ones, but it's a start. My phone buzzed with a message from Claire Morrison. She had organized a support group for the victims' families, and they were gathering again in the hospital chapel. People once strangers, unified by shared loss, now a force for change, determined to ensure other families never suffer the same fate. As the meeting adjourned, I made my way back to my office, 1 floor below Marcus's where I had worked while he committed his vile acts above me. The atmosphere felt altered, heavy with the knowledge of what I had uncovered. Patient files awaited on my desk, People who had placed their trust in me just as others had trusted Marcus. A knock on my door revealed Dr. Reynolds from the Ethics Committee. The medical board just concluded their emergency session, she said. They're revoking Marcus's license immediately. Every doctor who is complicit or aware of his schemes will face action. What about those who suspected but remained silent? I asked. Mandatory ethics reviews, supervised practice, possible suspensions. It depends on what they knew and when. No one walks away clean from this. I nodded, gazing out my office window at the hospital grounds below. Somewhere out there, more families were learning the awful truth that their loved ones' deaths might not have been inevitable, that their trust had been violated in the most profound way. As evening descended, I found myself back in Marcus's private office, observing the FBI team's methodical investigation. Every drawer opened, every file scrutinized, every scrap of paper inspected for evidence of another victim, another life lost for profit. The gravity of all those cut-short lives seemed to bear down on the room, a palpable presence. Mrs. Thorne, Agent Cooper appeared in the doorway. Marcus is requesting to speak with you. He claims he wants to explain everything. I considered his request. Part of me wanted to deny him even this tiny measure of control, but certain questions still required answers. Details only he could provide. He's in interrogation room 2 at the federal building, Cooper continued. We'll be monitoring everything, of course. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, I replied, gathering my coat. For the families, they deserve every answer we can provide. The journey to the federal building was silent. City lights blurred past like flickering stars. I contemplated how drastically different this day had become from what Marcus had envisioned. His grand gesture at Le Papillon, intended to humiliate me, had instead triggered his downfall. Marcus looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, his customary confidence erased along with his expensive wardrobe and privileged status. When I entered the interrogation room, he barely lifted his head. "You've been busy," he said at last, his voice hoarse. "How long have you known about your murders or about Olivia?" I settled across from him, noticing how he recoiled at the mention of murders. I started suspecting something after Janet Morrison's death. The timing was too convenient, the insurance payout unreasonably tidy. But I never imagined the depth of the situation until I began digging. "They weren't murders," he protested weakly. "They were terminal patients. I was trying to advance science, find new treatments. Save it for your lawyers, Marcus." I cut him off sharply. "I've seen your laptop, the spreadsheets, the death tallies. You calculated everything right down to the expected insurance payouts. This wasn't about medicine, it was about money." He seemed to further deflate, his elaborately built justifications crumbling. The experimental wing required funding. Traditional grants proved insufficient. I thought if I could just demonstrate the efficacy. By killing people who were getting better? By falsifying drug trials? I leaned in. "What about me, Marcus? Was I merely another calculation in your spreadsheet, another convenient death to finance your research?" Almost imperceptibly, he paled. "You discovered that?" "Yes, I did. The life insurance policy, the planned complications following my fictitious pregnancy, I found it all." I showed him my phone, the incriminating evidence displayed. "You planned to kill me just like the others, make it appear a tragic medical error, all while starting anew with Olivia and your real child. Rebecca, please." He reached for me across the table, but I withdrew. "It wasn't that way. I loved you." "Don't." My voice was steely. "Don't pretend this was about love. It was about control, playing God. How many people did you kill, Marcus? What's the actual number?" He averted his eyes, incapable of meeting my gaze. I didn't keep track." "Liar." I slammed the spreadsheet printouts onto the table. "You itemized everything. Every death, every dollar, painstakingly documented. 47 confirmed victims so far, and we're still uncovering more." "I can make a deal," he said suddenly, desperation seeping into his tone. "I know things about other doctors, other hospitals, accomplices." "Already handled," I informed him. "Dr. Patterson is fully cooperative, as is everyone else involved. Your entire network disintegrates as we speak. Even the pharmaceutical companies are under investigation." His final glimmer of leverage extinguished, Marcus sagged into his chair, the full brunt of his predicament hitting him. "The baby," he uttered quietly. "Olivia's child. They'll never know you." I concluded for him. "Olivia's in witness protection. She'll testify against you, and then vanish to build a new life. Your child will never bear the burden of your name or your crimes. You've thought of everything, haven't you?" His old bitterness surfaced briefly. The perfect revenge. "This isn't about revenge, Marcus. It's about justice, for Janet Morrison, Thomas Chun, Jennifer Adams, for every life you snuffed out, every family you shattered." I stood, collecting my things. "The DA seeks multiple life sentences. You'll never practice medicine again, never harm another patient, never witness your child grow up." "Wait," he called as I reached the door. "Was any of it real? Our marriage?" I paused, hand on the doorknob. "I loved you once. Before I understood your true nature. Before you became a murderer." I afforded him no glance back as I added, "Goodbye, Marcus. Enjoy your life sentence, you've earned it." Outside the interrogation room, Agent Cooper was waiting alongside Dr. Reynolds. "We captured everything on tape," he confirmed. "His reactions, his admissions. It'll fortify the case even further." "The medical board would like to make a formal statement," Dr. Reynolds added. "They're requesting you speak at the press conference tomorrow. The families have specifically asked for you as their representative." My phone buzzed with another text from Claire Morrison. The support network had expanded, now including families from Marcus's past hospitals. They were organizing, planning to advocate for stricter oversight on experimental treatments, better patient protections. "One more stop," I informed Cooper. "I need to visit Olivia before she's relocated to witness protection." The safe house rested in a quiet suburb, unassuming and nondescript. Olivia sat in the living room, her hands protectively encircling her pregnant belly. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red from tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never knew, never suspected." "I believe you," I reassured her, taking a seat across from her. "You were merely another victim of his manipulation. But now you have a chance to make it right. Your testimony ensures he'll never hurt anyone ever again." "The baby," she began, voicing her deepest fear. "What do I tell them when they grow up? How can I explain their father is a serial killer?" "You tell them the truth," I replied. "That you had the strength to help stop him, that you chose justice over silence, and that by facing the truth, you protected them from potential harm." A year later, the courtroom brimmed for Marcus's sentencing. Families of his victims packed the gallery, each clutching photographs of loved ones now gone. I sat in the front row beside Claire Morrison, watching as the man I once loved faced consequences for his crimes. The trial had been exhaustive, extending for months, as each death was meticulously reviewed, every shred of evidence examined. Marcus's defense crumbled beneath the overwhelming proofs. The laptop's contents, Dr. Patterson's testimony, the pharmaceutical records, and most disastrously, Olivia's account of his admissions. "Will the defendant please rise?" instructed the judge. Marcus rose slowly, a mere shadow of his former self. Prison had fast-tracked his aging by decades in merely a year. "Dr. Marcus Thorne," the judge declared, "you have been convicted on 47 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of insurance fraud, medical malpractice, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The gravity of your crimes against your patients, their families, and the medical profession is unmatched." I observed Marcus's shoulders droop as the judge proceeded. "You exploited your position of trust to prey on vulnerable patients for profit. You killed those on a path to recovery, those with hopes, dreams, and families. You violated every oath you swore as a physician." The judge paused, locking eyes with Marcus. "This court sentences you to life imprisonment without parole, to run consecutively for each count of murder. You will never practice medicine again, never reap benefits from your crimes. You will spend your remaining days contemplating the lives you destroyed." As I felt Claire's hand squeeze mine, I was reminded that her mother's case had been the catalyst for my investigation. A justice long sought was now fulfilled. Outside the courtroom, the media gathered, and I was asked to articulate the collective sorrow and triumph of the victims' families. Today closes a dark chapter in medical history, I stated, looking into the cameras, but it also signifies a new beginning. Inspired by Claire and created by our survivors group, the Marcus Thorne Patient Protection Act promises stringent oversight of experimental treatments, so no family ever wonders if a loved one's death was a mere casualty of profit. Born from those initial gatherings in the hospital chapel, the law was Claire's brainchild. It requires several independent assessments of experimental treatments, mandates transparency, and establishes a national registry for tracking unusual death patterns in clinical trials. My phone chimed with a message from Olivia, who, having relocated with her daughter, now started a new life under a fresh name. The photograph of her smiling infant, blissfully unaware of her father's deeds, accompanied her message. She'll know nothing of him, only of how we helped bring him to justice. Later that evening, I revisited the hospital. It had been months since my last visit. With renovated and newly renamed facilities, the Morrison Chin Memorial Research Center, under proper leadership, the focus was now on genuine medical advancements to save lives, not end them. Dr. Sarah Martinez, reprised as head of oncology, had her reputation restored after her early warnings came to light. The hospital's environment had transformed, whistleblower protections were fortified, anonymous reporting systems were now in place, and regular external audits were mandatory. In my office, I discovered an invitation from the medical board to lead a new ethics oversight committee, leveraging my experience to avoid future abuses. The appointment provided a direct path to collaborate with hospitals across the nation in implementing reforms born from this ordeal. Dr. Thorne called a nurse, appearing at my doorway. One of the many who had testified against Marcus, the nurse informed me that the survivors group was assembling in the chapel, requesting my presence. I joined them in the familiar space where these individuals, now a chosen family over the past year, gathered. Claire Morrison was now managing a patient advocacy group, Sarah Chun had initiated a scholarship for medical ethics in her husband's honor, and Jennifer Adams's children were thriving beyond anyone's expectations. "We did it," Claire said, embracing me tightly. "Mom would be proud. All of them would be." "What happens next?" Sarah asked, voicing everyone's thoughts. Looking around at these survivors, these champions of justice who turn their grief into purpose, I replied, "Now, we ensure their deaths weren't in vain. We continue fighting for change, for accountability, for the protection of vulnerable patients. We narrate their stories, ensuring no one forgets what happened here." My phone illuminated with a final news alert. Medical serial killer starts life sentence, accompanied by Marcus's photograph on his way to prison, his medical license rescinded, his crimes preserved in history. Marcus had intended to disgrace me by bringing his pregnant mistress to our anniversary dinner. Instead, he orchestrated his own ruin. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey that brought us here, from the shocking reveal at Le Papillon to today's sentencing. Each step was about more than vengeance. It spoke of justice, systemic reform, and turning personal tragedy into substantive change. Marcus thought his display, at our anniversary, would be his triumph. Instead, it became his undoing, revealing his infidelity and years of calculated murders. His attempt to ruin me led to his own exposure, granting his victims justice at last. City lights blurred through my car window as I pondered our accomplishments. 47 families found closure, countless future patients secured through new laws and oversight, a murderer stopped, a corrupt system unmasked and reformed. Tomorrow promised further challenges. Enacting the Protection Act, collaborating with hospitals to prevent similar atrocities, supporting the survivors' network. But tonight, I could rest, knowing justice had been served, the truth unveiled. 5 years later, the Morrison Chin Memorial Research Center stood radiant in the morning sun as I ascended its steps. From the darkness of Marcus's crimes, the building had transformed into a beacon of ethical research. Today marked an important milestone, the graduation of our first class of medical ethics fellows, trained to identify and prevent healthcare fraud. Dr. Thorne, a familiar voice called. I turned to see Olivia, now Sarah Williams, approaching with her daughter, Emma. At 5 years old, Emma was a bright, inquisitive child, unaware of her father's darkness. They had flown in discreetly for this event, their new identities protected, yet allowing for occasional visits. The changes you've enacted here, Olivia remarked, gazing up at the building, is incredible. Emma, here is where Mom helped make hospitals safer for everyone. Emma offered a shy smile, holding her mother's hand. She bore Marcus's eyes but Olivia's gentle spirit. Thanks to the Witness Protection Program and Olivia's bravery in testifying, Emma would grow up beyond her father's shadow, knowing her mother helped stop those who would harm others. Inside my office, now filled with accolades and acknowledgement for our patient protection initiatives, I found Claire Morrison awaiting. She had become the national face of our advocacy, turning her mother's death into a catalyst for industry-wide change. The latest numbers are in, she announced, spreading reports across my desk. Patient mortality rates in experimental treatments have declined by 68% since the Protection Act was enforced. We are saving lives, Rebecca. I examined the reports, recognizing familiar hospital names. Every institution Marcus had worked at undertook thorough reforms of their oversight mechanisms, and his crimes revealed vulnerabilities in the entire medical framework, leading to reforms that extended well beyond Boston. Dr. Patterson will be released next week, Claire continued, observing my reaction. Unlike Marcus, his former accomplice served a reduced sentence for his complete cooperation. He's agreed to join our speaking circuit, sharing his story to inform medical practitioners about recognizing and reporting fraud. My phone signaled a news alert. Another hospital had adopted our protection protocols. The changes we implemented spread, creating a network of safeguards nearly preventing someone like Marcus from going undetected again. There's more, Claire said, pulling out a letter. The Medical Ethics Board wants to establish a permanent role, Chief Patient Advocate. They're offering it to you. The position would broaden our work, implementing protective systems across hospitals nationwide. It was the zenith of all we had endeavored for since that evening at Le Papillon, when Marcus's hubris finally unmasked his crimes. Later that afternoon, I visited the hospital chapel, where it all began. Renovated into a memorial, photos of Marcus's victims adorned the walls. Each face conveyed not only loss but also the transformative impacts their deaths inspired. Sarah Chen's widow established a scholarship fund for ethics-focused medical students, while Jennifer Adams's children became healthcare whistleblower attorneys, defending those who exposed fraud. My phone lit up with a message from Agent Cooper, now leading the FBI's specialized medical crimes unit born from Marcus's case. Thought you'd like to know. Marcus tried appealing again. Denied unanimously. He won't ever leave prison. I imagined Marcus, aging alone in his cell, his legacy deteriorated from esteemed oncologist to a cautionary account.